Never believed in life after death. I thought heaven and hell were just tales to scare people into behaving. But after what happened to me on October 3 RD 2023, I know the truth. My name is Jacobo, and I was a farmer set in my ways, hardened by life and full of bitterness toward anyone who wasn't like me. But when my heart failed and I left my body, I saw something I can never forget. What I experienced in those minutes changed me forever. I came back because I had to warn others before it's too late. It was a day like any other or so. I thought the sky was clear, the air smelled of freshly tilled soil, and I had my work cut out for me. Farming was all I had ever known, and I took pride in running my land with strict discipline. I wasn't a kind man, nor was I the type to offer a helping hand, unless there was something in it for me. The people in town knew me as tough, and I wore that reputation like a badge of honor. That morning, I went about my usual routine, feeding the livestock, checking the irrigation, and making sure everything was in order before heading inside for breakfast. My wife Maria had made a simple meal, but I barely acknowledged her. As I ate, my mind was preoccupied with the usual thoughts: the weather, the yield, and the people in town who in my eyes didn't belong there. The day passed uneventfully until late afternoon, when a sharp pain shot through my chest. At first, I brushed it off. I'd always been strong, never one to complain about aches or pains. But this was different. It felt like someone had taken a fist and squeezed the life out of my heart. My knees buckled, and before I knew it, I was lying on the ground, gasping for air. Maria rushed to my side, her voice frantic as she called for help. The last thing I saw was the fading blue of the sky above me, the sun dipping toward the horizon. Then everything went black. I expected nothingness, no pain, no thought, just silence. But what happened next shattered every belief I had ever held. I was no longer on the ground, clutching my chest in agony. Instead, I was standing above my own body, watching as Maria wept, her hands gripping my lifeless form. The paramedics arrived, working desperately to revive me, their voices urgent, their movements precise, but I felt no attachment to my body anymore. It was like watching a stranger. Then I felt a force, an invisible pull dragging me upward. I resisted, trying to reach for Maria, but my hands passed through her like mist. My voice didn't work. Panic set in, but it was useless. I was moving whether I wanted to or not. The air around me changed, thickening with something I couldn't describe. It was neither warm nor cold, but heavy, pressing against my very being. Darkness stretched before me, vast and endless. But I wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the distance, whispering. The voices were strange, familiar yet distorted. They spoke in tongues I didn't recognize, but somehow I understood every word. "Do you see now?" one of them asked. "Do you understand what awaits?" I tried to respond, but my mouth wouldn't work. Fear wrapped around me like chains, holding me in place. Then the darkness opened, revealing a path ahead. I didn't walk. I was pulled, drawn towards something beyond my understanding. I hovered weightless, watching as the scene below unfolded. The paramedics were shouting now, their hands working to restart my heart. The sound of sirens echoed in the distance, but I was detached, like an observer rather than a participant. Maria was pleading with them to do something, her sobs breaking through the chaos. I'd never seen her cry like that before. I had never seen myself like this before either. My face was pale, my lips blue, my body unmoving. The realization hit me: I was dead. I turned, looking around, trying to understand where I was, but the world I knew was slipping away. The farm, the house, the people, it all faded like smoke, leaving only a vast emptiness. The voices returned, surrounding me, whispering things I couldn't grasp. Some sounded familiar, some sounded accusing. A presence loomed behind me, watching. I didn't dare turn around. Something deep inside told me I wouldn't like what I saw. "Jacobo," a voice called, deep and resonant. It shook me to my core. I still couldn't speak, couldn't move. I was weightless yet heavy with dread. Then, without warning, I was yanked downward. The world blurred, the farm disappeared completely, and I found myself somewhere else, somewhere I never wanted to be. The darkness was absolute. No light, no sound except for the whispers that swirled around me. I wasn't alone, but I wished I was. Figures moved in the distance, shifting in and out of view. Some I recognized, others I didn't, but all of them shared something in common. Their faces were twisted in anguish. I tried to back away, but there was no ground beneath me, no direction, just emptiness. A cold wind blew through the void, carrying with it a scent I couldn't place. Something rotten, something decayed. "You thought you knew everything," a voice sneered from the darkness. "You thought you were better than them." I whipped my head around, searching for speaker, but there was nothing, only more whispers, more faces in agony. "Who are you?" I demanded. Though my voice barely carried in the void, the answer came not in words, but in images. I saw my life, every action I had taken, every cruel word I had spoken, the people I had judged, the ones I had treated as less than human. They were here watching me, their eyes filled with sorrow, not anger. I felt something tighten around my chest, an invisible weight pressing down. I wanted to wake up to leave, but I couldn't. The voice returned now, filled with malice. You chose this path, Jacobo. Now you will see where it leads. Then the ground beneath me gave way, and I fell. I was falling yet. There was no end, no ground, just an abyss stretching endlessly below me. My screams vanished into the darkness, swallowed by something vast and ancient. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the fall stopped. I wasn't standing, I was suspended, as if the void itself held me in place. That's when I saw them. Figures emerged from them. Darkness surrounding me at first. They were only shapes, faceless, shifting forms that seemed to whisper without moving their mouths. But as they drew closer, the shadows melted away, and I saw their faces. My breath caught. I knew these people. There was Diego, the boy I bullied when we were kids, because he was different from me. There was Maria's father, a man I had always dismissed, never giving him the respect he deserved simply because he was not my kind. And then there was Luis. Luis had worked on my farm for years. He was quiet, hardworking, and never spoke back even when I treated him poorly. I never cared to know him beyond what he could do for me, and now here he was, staring at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. It wasn't anger. It wasn't hatred. It was something worse, disappointment. The voices rose not in shouts, but in sorrowful murmurs. You never saw us as people. You thought yourself above us. You never asked our names, our stories. You only saw what you wanted to see. I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat because they were right. Then the void trembled, and a new presence made itself known. The darkness parted, and something else was waiting, something worse. The figures around me faded, and in their place stood a mirror. It wasn't made of glass. It pulsed like it was alive, and when I looked into it, I didn't see my reflection. I saw my soul. At first, it was just my life playing out before me, moments of I had long forgotten. My first day on the farm, the first time I made Maria cry, the time I refused to help a stranger who had broken down near my land. Every choice, every decision, every cruel thought, it was all there, raw and unfiltered. But then it changed. I saw those same moments from the other side. I felt what they felt. I felt Diego's fear when I tormented him. I felt Maria's heartbreak when I ignored her kindness. I felt Luis's quiet pain every time I dismissed him as nothing more than a worker, and the worst part, I couldn't look away. The mirror pulsed, and my reflection shifted. My skin turned gray, my eyes hollow. I looked monstrous, twisted by every action, every hateful thought. This was what my soul looked like. This was what I had become. A voice deep and unshakable echoed through the void. Do you see now? I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say it wasn't fair. But deep inside, I knew the truth. This was justice. As I stared at my twisted reflection, the darkness around me pulsed again. The weight of it grew heavier, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. And then the voice came again, stronger, deeper, filled with an authority I had never known. Jacobo. The sound alone shook me to my core. It was neither cruel nor kind. It simply was absolute, unquestionable. A voice that had existed before time itself. I turned, though I didn't want to, and saw something beyond my understanding, a light vast and infinite, burning without consuming. It wasn't warm or comforting. It was pure truth, and in its presence I had no place to hide. You were given time, you were given choice, and you chose this. The words cut through me. I tried to speak, to explain, but nothing came out. You treated others as lesser. You judged without knowing. You built walls in your heart that I never placed there. I fell to my knees, trembling. My life, my thoughts, my very existence was laid bare. This voice knew me, every thought I had ever had, every excuse I had ever made, and I realized then none of them mattered. I had wasted my life. The light burned brighter, and I was no longer in the void. I was somewhere else, a place I didn't recognize. And before me was something I never expected, a river. The river stretched endlessly before me, its waters dark and restless. But it wasn't made of water, it was made of tears. And the moment I saw it, I knew whose they were. Every tear belonged to someone I had wronged. Every drop carried pain I had caused. Every ripple was a moment where my cruelty had left a scar on another soul. I stepped forward, my feet sinking into the cold ground, and the moment I did, the river reacted. It showed me Luis sitting alone after I had berated him. Diego, as a child, cried in the shadows after I mocked him in front of others. My wife Maria, wiping away silent tears. When I dismissed her feelings, I wanted to look away, but the river wouldn't let me. I was being made to feel it, the sorrow, the loss, the loneliness. I had caused this, and now I had to bear it. I fell to my knees at the river's edge, hands trembling. I wanted to take it back, to undo it all, but the river didn't work that way. The past could not be rewritten. A single tear fell from my eye, joining the river, and in that moment, I finally understood the weight of my life. Then the voice returned. Do you see now? I nodded, my breath shaky. Yes, but what came next I was not prepared for. As I knelt by the river of sorrow, my body trembling from the weight of my past, something changed. The darkness that had surrounded me began to shift, parting like a heavy mist, and before me, stretching into the unknown, was a bridge. It wasn't made of stone or wood, but something ethereal, woven from light and shadow, flickering as though it wasn't fully there. It seemed ancient yet untouched by time. On the other side, I saw something, a place I couldn't comprehend, a place of peace. It wasn't just a beautiful land, it was home, though I had never been there before. The voice spoke again, its tone heavier now. This is the choice before you, Jacobo. I looked down at the river. The pain I had caused stretched endlessly beneath me. But the bridge, it was hope. You may cross, but only if your heart is truly willing to change. If you walk this path, there is no turning back. You must leave behind everything that bound you, your pride, your hate, your bitterness. If you choose to carry them, the bridge will crumble beneath you. I swallowed hard. I wanted to move, but my legs felt frozen. Could I do it? Could I truly let go of the man I had been? I looked at my hands, still shaking. For the first time I saw them not as the hands of a strong man, but as the hands of someone who had done harm. Slowly, I stood. My legs felt weak, but I took the first step. The bridge held. I took another, and another. Then the whispers rose again. Voices from the past, pulling at me. You can't change. You don't deserve forgiveness. You are who you are, Jacobo. I hesitated. The bridge trembled beneath me. Keep going, the voice of authority cut through the lies. Steadying my feet, I gritted my teeth and took another step, willing myself forward. But just as I neared the other side, a shadow loomed, and I realized my test was far from over. Before me stood a great chasm, deeper than anything I could fathom. The bridge did not lead straight across it, only brought me to the edge. On the far side was the land of peace, untouched by sorrow, glowing with a light that pulsed with something more powerful than I had ever known. But beneath me was something else entirely. A storm raged within the chasm, a twisting, howling mass of anguish. I heard voices, screams, cries, whispers of regret. I felt its pull of force trying to drag me downward, and then I saw them. Figures moved in the darkness below, countless souls writhing in torment. Some clutched at the edges, trying to climb out, but there was nothing to hold on to. Others had given up entirely, sinking deeper into the abyss. A chill ran through me. These were not strangers. I knew them. I saw men I had worked alongside, people I had dismissed as nothing, men who had lived their lives the way I had, full of pride, anger, and hate. They were trapped, their faces twisted in agony. Hobo, one of them, called my name. I turned and saw Mado, an old friend. We had grown up together, side by side, sharing the same hateful beliefs. He had died years ago in an accident. I had barely given it a thought at the time, but now he was here. Help me, he cried, reaching up toward me. Everything in me wanted to reach back to pull him out, but the voice returned, solemn and unwavering. You cannot save those who refuse to let go. Tears burned my eyes. Mateo's hands grasped at empty air, his screams fading as the darkness swallowed him whole. The chasm trembled. The bridge shuddered beneath me. Choose. I clenched my fists. There was only one choice. I turned my back on the abyss and took my first step toward the light. With each step forward, I felt something breaking inside me. The weight of my past clung to me like chains. Every cruel word, every hateful action, it was all there. But with every step I let go of another piece. I saw Diego, the boy I had bullied. I whispered, forgive me. I saw Luis, the man I had ignored. I was wrong. I saw Maria, my wife, and for the first time I felt her pain. Every step was an act of surrender, a breaking of the old self. I wasn't just walking towards something, I was walking away from what I had been. But then the final test came, the last burden, the heaviest of all. I saw myself, the old Jacobo, standing at the edge of the bridge, staring back at me. His eyes were filled with the same pride, the same anger, the same bitterness that had ruled my life. You don't have to change, he said. It's easier to stay the same. I took a deep breath. No, I said. I refuse. With those words, the old Jacobo dissolved into the air, carried away like dust in the wind. The bridge beneath me grew solid, the weight vanished, and ahead of me, the light grew brighter just as I reached the final step. Something unexpected happened. The world around me trembled, and I felt myself being pulled backward away from the light. No, I gasped, reaching out, but the light grew farther, fading from view. Then I heard another voice, not the commanding one from before, but one I knew. Maria, come back to me. Jacobo, the pain returned, a crushing weight on my chest. My eyes shot open, and I was back in my body in the hospital, surrounded by machines and doctors. My heart was racing, my lungs burning. I could barely move, but I was alive. Maria was at my side, CL touching my hand, her eyes red with tears. You were gone. She sobbed. The doctors said you were dead for 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes in their world. But I had lived in eternity. Tears welled in my eyes, but they were not from fear, they were from gratitude. I had been given another chance. I wasn't the same Jacobo who had left. That man had died. The man who woke up in that hospital bed was someone new, and now I had a mission. Maria, I whispered, my voice hoarse, I need to tell you everything. I came back with a gasp, my chest heaving, my lungs burning as if I had been suffocating for hours. The sterile scent of the hospital hit me first, the beeping of machines ringing in my ears. My body felt heavy, my limbs unresponsive, but the worst part wasn't the pain, it was the sheer overwhelming realization that I was back for a moment. I lay still, trying to process what had happened. My last memory was the chasm, the bridge, the voice of authority commanding me to choose. I had taken that final step into the light, but now I was here, trapped in my broken body once again. I turned my head slightly, and there she was, Maria, my wife, clutching my hands so tightly, her knuckles were white. Tears strew her face, her lips moving in a frantic prayer. I wanted to speak, to tell her I was okay, but the words wouldn't come. Then a sob broke from her lips. Chobo, you're back. Oh my God. You're back. I could barely process her words. My mind was still trapped in the memories of what I had seen, the river of sorrow, the chasm, the faces of those I had wronged, those who had been lost forever. But the moment I looked into Maria's eyes, something clicked. This was my second chance. The doctors stormed in, their voices urgent as they checked the machines, their hands pressing against my skin, shining lights into my pupils, confirming what they could barely believe. Jacobo, the man who had been clinically dead for 7 minutes, had returned, but the hobo they had known was gone. The man lying in that bed was not the same. I could see it in Maria's expression. She knew something had changed. She just didn't know what. Not yet. In the days that followed, my body healed, but my mind wrestled with what had happened. How could I explain what I had seen? How could I make people understand the reality of what I had experienced? Maria noticed the change before I even spoke a word about it. The way I held her hand differently, the way I looked at her with a depth I had never shown before, the way my voice softened when I spoke, no longer carrying that sharp, dismissive edge she had grown used to. You're different, she said one evening as she sat beside me in my hospital room. Her voice wasn't accusatory, just filled with quiet wonder. It's like you woke up as someone else. I swallowed hard. Maria, I whispered, I need to tell you what happened. And so I did. I told her about the darkness, about the voices, about the mirror that showed me the ugliness of my own soul. I told her about the river of sorrow and how I had felt for the first time, the pain I had inflicted on others. I told her about the chasm, about the people I had seen trapped there, about the voice that had forced me to choose. Tears streamed down Maria's face as she listened, gripping my hand even tighter. But she didn't interrupt. She just let me speak. And when I finished, she wiped her tears away and said the words that changed everything. Then don't waste this second chance, hobo. If God sent you back, it means there's still work for you to do. That was the moment I knew I hadn't been brought back just to live. I had been brought back to change and change. Leaving the hospital was like stepping into a new world. Even though nothing had changed except me, the fields still stretched across the land, the town still bustled with the same people, the same faces I had known all my life, but for the first time I truly saw them. I saw the people I had looked down on, the ones I had judged for no reason other than they were different from me. I saw them. Farm workers I had dismissed, the neighbors I had ignored, the family members I had pushed away. I had spent my life dividing people, drawing lines between us and them, and now I saw how foolish it had been. I had been blind. But now my eyes were open. I didn't waste time. I sought out Dago, the boy I had bullied as a child. He was a grown man now, with a family of his own. When I knocked on his door, his eyes widened in surprise. Jacobo, he asked, hesitant, unsure. I need to ask for your forgiveness. I said, my voice thick. I was cruel to you when we were kids. I never saw it then, but I see it now. and I'm sorry." His stunned silence was proof that the old Jacobo would have never said such words, but after a moment, Diego nodded. "In the past," he said, "if you've changed, that's what matters." I did the same with Liz, the farm worker I had treated like a tool rather than a man, and one by one, I sought out those I had wronged, asking not just for their forgiveness, but for the chance to be better. Some welcomed me with open arms. Others were hesitant, and I didn't blame them. A lifetime of bitterness doesn't vanish overnight. But I didn't stop, and now I write this to you because I need the world to know I saw what waits for us. I saw the torment that comes from a life of selfishness, of pride, of hate. I saw the endless regret of those who never changed, who never made things right. I was given a second chance. Many will not be if you're reading this. I beg you, don't wait until it's too late. Let go of your anger. Let go of your hate. Look at the people around you not as different, not as enemies, but as souls that matter just as much as yours, because when the time comes, when you stand at the edge of that chasm, you will have to answer for every choice, every word, every action, and when that moment arrives, I hope you can stand without fear. I hope you choose the light I did, and I will never look back in. The weeks that followed my return, I struggled to carry the weight of what I had seen. The images of the chasm, the river of sorrow, and the countless souls trapped in darkness haunted my dreams every night. I woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, reaching for Maria as if to remind myself that I was still here, still alive. The hardest part wasn't accepting that I had been given a second chance. It was knowing that so many others wouldn't. I had seen them, those who had fallen, those who had chosen the easy road in life, unaware of where it led until it was too late. Some had been people like me, stubborn, full of hate, unwilling to change. Others had been indifferent, thinking they were good enough, never realizing that their hearts had hardened just the same. I wanted to warn everyone. I wanted to shake them by the shoulders and tell them, wake up, you have no idea what's waiting on the other side. But I quickly learned that people don't want to hear the truth. I started with my closest friends, the men I had known for years. We sat around the same table where we had shared drinks and laughter, but this time I wasn't the same hobo. When I told them about what I had seen, the room grew quiet. Some of them listened, their expressions dark with unease. Others laughed it off, telling me I must have dreamed it, that my mind had played tricks on me while I was unconscious. One of them, Enrique, scoffed. "Come on, hobo, you really think you died and saw hell? That's just fear talking. You had a heart attack, that's all." I looked him in the eye. "Know what, Enrique? I know what I saw, and if you could see it too, you'd never doubt it again." But that was the problem. No one could see it but me. Maria was my only anchor. She believed me not because she had seen what I had, but because she could see the change in me. I was no longer the man she had married, and for the first time in years, that was a good thing. Still, I wondered, what was I supposed to do with this knowledge? Why had I been sent back if no one would listen? And then I got my answer. It happened on a Sunday morning. I was on my way to town, lost in thought, when I saw a man stranded on the side of the road. His truck had broken down and he was waving for help. The old Jacobo would have driven past without a second thought. The old Jacobo would have judged him by his clothes, by the way he looked, by the color of his skin. But the old hobo was dead. I pulled over and stepped out. The man looked surprised, almost wary. "You need help?" I asked. His name was Samuel, a farm worker passing through, trying to get to the next town. His truck had given out, and he had no way to call for assistance. He looked at me as if expecting me to turn him away like so many others had. But I didn't. I helped him. I spent hours working on his truck, getting grease on my hands, sweating under the sun, things I never would have done for a stranger before. And when we finally got it running again, he shook my hand, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen in a long time. Gratitude, respect. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard the voice again, not as thunderous as before, but still unmistakable. "Now, you understand, it wasn't about grand gestures or forcing people to believe what I had seen. It was about living differently, about choosing love over hate, kindness over pride. I had spent my life turning my back on people. Now I would spend the rest of it reaching for them instead. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. What I do know is that I wasn't brought back to stay silent. I was given this second chance to warn others, to make them see before it's too late. Not everyone listens. Some still mock me, laugh behind my back, call me crazy, but I don't care anymore. My pride died in that void. My ego was shattered in the river of sorrow. Now I speak because I must. I tell my story to whoever will listen. I write letters, share my testimony in churches, talk to strangers who cross my path. Some listen with wide eyes, taking every word to heart. Others roll their eyes, dismissing me as another man clinging to fear. But I know the truth. I have seen what awaits beyond this world. I have seen what happens when a man wastes his life on hate, pride, and selfishness. I have seen what happens when a soul chooses comfort over conscience, bitterness over forgiveness. And I have seen the alternative, the bridge, the light. The peace that I barely glimpsed before I was pulled back. So I tell people the truth whether they believe me or not, because I know that someday they will find themselves at the edge of that chasm. They will have to face their own reflection, their own choices, and when that moment comes, I pray they will remember my words. I was given a second chance. Most won't be if you are reading this. If you feel something stirring inside, you don't ignore it. This is your warning. This is your chance. Make things right, love, while you still can, because when the time comes, there will be no excuses, no justifications, no second chances, only the truth. And when you see it, when you finally see yourself for who you truly are, I hope you can stand before it without fear. I hope you can. Cross the bridge. I pray you choose the light.